If your physical brain is a radio, right, and that device suddenly breaks, the music stops playing.
Yeah, the room just goes completely quiet.
Exactly. The room goes quiet. But did the invisible radio signal it was receiving actually die?
Right. That is the big question.
It is. Because today we are welcoming you to the deep dives, and we're cracking open some ancient Islamic thought and Sufi psychology to answer a question that, honestly, modern science still fiercely wrestles with.
Oh, absolutely. It's a massive debate.
Are you just a byproduct of firing neurons? Or is your soul the signal and your body just the receiver? We are taking a fascinating stack of philosophical sources to uncover how this ancient wisdom views the mind, the self, and our pursuit of absolute truth. Okay, let's unpack this, because we really need to start with that foundational clash between matter and spirit.
We really do.
Because we live in a world that basically tells us we are our biology, period.
We do, yeah. And to understand how a human being reaches any kind of ultimate truth, we first have to figure out what a human being actually is.
Right.
And modern Western psychology heavily favors matter as the ultimate starting point. It often reduces consciousness, what we might call the soul, to a mere biological function.
Like it's just chemicals.
Exactly. In that view, everything you feel or love or believe is just a byproduct of complex chemical reactions in your prefrontal cortex. But this ancient framework offers a really profound critique of that purely material worldview.
Which is fascinating.
It is. The core argument is that you simply cannot reach what transcends matter by starting exclusively from matter.
Which is an incredibly bold claim, especially today. I mean, if we go back to that radio analogy for a second, when we look at modern neuroscience, we can literally map the brain.
Oh, yeah. Very precisely.
Right. We can see the specific areas lighting up when someone feels love or anger. It is highly measurable. So it makes total sense that science says, look, here is the machinery creating the feeling.
Sure, the data is all right there.
But Sufi psychology completely flips that. The physical receiver might be broken or altered, which obviously changes the output, but the invisible signal, the soul, is entirely independent of the hardware.
It is a totally different vantage point. Instead of starting with the physical hardware, this tradition suggests we must begin from where the soul actually manifests itself in our lives.
Like in our daily experience.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Through our capacity for love, our free will, our consciousness, and our faith. In Islamic thought, reality is not just what you can, put under a microscope.
Right.
Existence is understood as a threefold reality. You have the visible world, which we interact with every single day. Then you have the realm of command, which consists of the immaterial laws and forces governing everything.
Okay, and the third.
And finally, absolute reality. And the human being. We are positioned exactly at the intersection of all three of those.
Wow, so we are the bridge.
We are the bridge.
Through our 5 physical senses, we perceive the limited, finite world. But through our consciousness, we actually touch the limitless. We literally have finitude on one side of our nature and infinity on the other.
And the crucial takeaway here is that these two sides are not supposed to be at war. They complete each other.
That makes sense.
Historically, Western thought has poured its genius into mastering the external world. Physics, engineering, medicine, all of that.
The measurable stuff.
Right. While Eastern traditions, conversely, have spent centuries mastering the inner world, the spirit, the ego, the mind. But a human being requires a balance of both.
You can't just have one.
No, true equilibrium only emerges when the mind is fed by both sensory, measurable experience and deep inner awareness. When you manage to bridge those two, basic knowledge transforms into reason, and reason eventually matures into wisdom.
That sounds beautiful in theory, right? But practically, how do you actually balance the two? Because for you, the listener, navigating your life right now, your sensory experience likely involves paying a mortgage, sitting in traffic, and answering like 100 emails a day.
Yeah, the daily grind.
Exactly. So where does inner awareness fit into that basic survival mode?
Well, that is exactly where their concept of justice comes into play. And it is not justice in the way we typically use the word today.
Right, because we usually think of justice as a courtroom or a legal system or just society's rules.
Yes, external things.
But this framework treats justice as an internal ecosystem. It is about establishing a rigorous balance within your own psychology first.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, internal justice requires a disciplined mind, a highly regulated emotional life, and a powerful will. You cannot be a just person externally if you are a tyrant internally.
Oh, wow.
You have to discipline your intellect, regulate your primal desires, and refine your anger. And notice the verbs there, regulate and refine, not destroy.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. Take anger, for example. Anger isn't inherently evil. If you have no anger, you completely lack the capacity to protect yourself or your loved ones.
Which you need.
Right. But raw, unchecked anger is highly destructive. When you refine and discipline anger, it transforms into courage. When you regulate raw desire, it becomes chastity and self-restraint.
I want to pause on that because it is such a practical metric for daily life. Like waiting for your turn in line at the grocery store, that is a form of justice. You are adhering to the rules.
Sure.
But consciously giving up your spot in line to someone who is clearly struggling, that is a much higher form of justice. It is an action born from an internal conscience, not just external compliance.
Exactly. It comes from within.
You aren't doing it because a law forced you to. You are doing it because your internal ecosystem is balanced enough to recognize the humanity in someone else.
Precisely. And as a person acquires this inner harmony, they naturally become trustworthy and beneficial to the people around them. Any peace in the outer world is entirely downstream from this harmony within the inner world.
But there is a danger here, isn't there? We can talk about achieving inner justice and touching this limitless reality all day long, but human beings are brilliant at lying to themselves.
Oh, the best at it.
Yeah, so how do you know you have actually reached a profound truth and you aren't just experiencing a really convincing delusion? That brings us to the epistemological journey outlined in these sources, the thresholds of certainty.
This is a really rigorous progression designed to test what you actually know. It is a journey that moves from the intellect to the heart to lived, undeniable experience.
Let's slow down and walk through these because the distinctions are genuinely fascinating. The first stage is called ilm al-yaqin, which essentially translates to the knowledge of certainty.
Right.
Imagine you are standing on a hill and miles away in the valley, you see a thick column of smoke rising into the sky. Your intellect immediately deduces that there must be a fire.
Cause and effect.
Exactly. The evidence is so overwhelmingly strong that denying the existence of the fire would be totally unreasonable. Your intellect reads the clues of the universe, moves from cause to effect, and proves the truth.
And this is the limitation of modern rationalism, proving the truth is not the same as living it.
Oh, that's good.
The intellect can definitively prove the fire's there, but your body isn't warm, your heart hasn't tasted the reality of it, you just possess data.
It's just information on a page at that point.
Exactly. That is why understanding has to travel downward from the intellect into the heart, leading to the second stage, ayn al-yaqin, or the certainty of direct seeing.
This is where the framework introduces the eye of the heart. Now, we really need to clarify this because in modern pop culture, the heart is just this messy place where you feel sad or romantic or impulsive.
Yeah, a very emotional center.
But Sufi psychology treats the heart as a highly tuned perceptive faculty. It is an organ of witnessing meaning.
The intellect understands a truth, but the heart beholds it inwardly. Returning to the smoke analogy, you are no longer standing on the hill. You have walked down into the valley, you have approached the source, and your eyes actually see the dancing flames.
The doubt is just gone.
Right. Any doubt that might have lingered in the intellect dissolves completely. At this stage, the universe isn't just a collection of atoms, it becomes a mirror. You don't just see the biological structure of a tree, you perceive the majesty and wisdom behind its growth.
You perceive the meaning behind the matter, and yet even seeing the fire isn't the final destination. The summit of this entire journey is haq al-yaqin, the truth of certainty.
The ultimate stage.
Right. You no longer merely know about the truth and you no longer just observe it, you live within it.
Because to know the fire is one thing, to see the fire is another, but to hold your hand up to the flame and physically feel the blistering heat, that is the truth of certainty.
There is a brilliant story in the text that perfectly captures this difference. A traveler is wandering through the desert, dying of thirst. He stumbles upon an oasis where 3 men are standing beside a deep well.
I love this analogy.
The first man looks at the traveler and says, "There is water down there. I know this because I have studied the topographical maps of this region." That man is the intellect.
Map reader.
Yeah. Then the second man says, "I just lowered a wooden bucket down the shaft and I saw the water splashing." That man is the heart.
He witnessed it.
Right. But the third man says absolutely nothing. He is just wiping his mouth and washing his face. When asked why he doesn't offer any proof, he simply says, "Because I just drank the water."
That is the ultimate goal. The truth is no longer observed from a safe distance. Your entire being is saturated by it. To know is the map. To see is the bucket. To drink is the reality.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. There's another teaching story about a student and a master.
Oh, yeah.
The student is incredibly frustrated and asks, if this ultimate truth is everywhere, why is everyone so blind to it? The master hands him a pristine mirror and asks what he sees. Myself, the student replies.
Naturally.
Then the master throws a handful of thick dust over the glass and asks again. The student says he sees nothing. The master explains that the human heart is the mirror of truth, and the dust is our own heedlessness. The truth never left. The mirror just got dirty.
It's a powerful image.
So, I have to challenge this, right? If the truth is so incredibly obvious, and all we have to do is wipe away the dust, why is it so agonizingly hard to just live in the light of the sun? What is generating all this dust?
That question cuts to the absolute core of the human condition, and the master in that story provides the answer. He tells the student that to truly experience the fire, to drink the water, to wipe the mirror clean, a person has to deliberately depart from the relentless desires and whims of their own ego.
Which is not easy.
Not at all. And this introduces the single greatest internal obstacle we possess, the nafs, which translates to the self or the ego.
The ultimate inner battlefield.
Exactly. And Sufi psychology views the nafs in an incredibly nuanced way. It is not a demonic enemy that you need to destroy, but it is certainly not a friend you should blindly trust either.
So what is it?
It is a raw, uncalibrated power. Left neglected, it is wildly destructive. But guided and disciplined, it is the engine of your evolution. The classical description is that the self begins as a fire that burns and consumes everything in its path, but when disciplined, it turns into a light that illuminates the road ahead.
So it is almost like the ego isn't a virus we need to cure, but a wild horse we need to tame.
That's a great way to put it.
And the psychology outlines 4 very distinct stages of how this nafs evolves. It begins at the bottom with the nafs alamara, the commanding self.
In this first stage, you aren't riding the horse is dragging you. Your primal desires entirely dominate your decision-making.
We've all been there.
Right. The immediate, cheap pleasure is always chosen over the difficult, lasting good. You are completely governed by what feels good right now, regardless of the consequences.
We see this constantly today. It is doom scrolling for 3 hours when you know you should sleep. It is snapping at your partner because the anger feels good to release in the moment.
Exactly.
The commanding self wants engagement, and it wants it instantly. But eventually, if you pay attention, the conscience wakes up. And that pushes you into the second stage rage, nafs alawama, the self-reproaching soul.
Where things start to shift.
Yeah. You do the bad habit, but suddenly you feel awful about it. You start to interrogate your own actions. But wait, I want to look at this through a modern lens for a second.
Sure.
Today, we are constantly told that guilt is a toxic emotion. We are encouraged to let go of guilt and just accept ourselves. But this ancient psychology calls this self-reproaching guilt a profound gift. Why is feeling bad about yourself considered a spiritual upgrade?
Because it proves your internal compass isn't dead. Think of it like touching a hot stove. The physical pain you feel isn't toxic. It is a vital biological warning system telling you to pull your hand away before you are permanently damaged.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Guilt is the pain receptor of the soul. If you feel zero friction when you act selfishly, you are still trapped in the commanding self. Feeling the agonizing friction of guilt means your awareness is expanding. It is the turning point of human development.
That reframing is incredibly powerful. Guilt isn't a cage. It is an alarm clock.
Exactly.
And if you actually listen to the alarm instead of hitting snooze, you transition into the third stage, nafs ambulanema, the inspired self. This is where the heavy friction starts to fade. Doing the right thing isn't just a grueling white-knuckle chore anymore. Goodness actually starts to become appealing to your nature.
The neuroplasticity of the soul, so to speak, has started to rewire itself. The habits of discipline are bearing fruit.
Right.
And that eventually delivers you to the fourth and final stage, nafs al-mutmainna, the tranquil self. The brutal inner civil war finally subsides. You are at peace with your own nature.
It sounds like a relief.
It is. The ego hasn't been eradicated. You still have a personality, you still have preferences, but it no longer dominates the steering wheel. It sits in the passenger seat and accompanies you.
But I want to dig into the actual mechanism of this evolution. How does a person realistically survive the journey from the commanding self to the tranquil self? Is it just through rigid, terrifying discipline? Do we just beat our ego into submission through sheer willpower?
What's fascinating here is how these sources map out the inner evolution of human motivation. They argue that a human being almost always begins their journey motivated by fear.
Fear, really?
Yes. And importantly, they clarify that fear is not a bad thing in the beginning. Fear is structural. It sets necessary boundaries. It restrains excess. You might stop a destructive habit simply out of the sheer fear of ruining your health or losing your family.
Right. Fear is the scaffolding that keeps the building from collapsing while it's under construction. If I go to the gym because I'm terrified of having a heart attack, that fear is highly useful. He gets me in the door.
Exactly. It serves a very specific purpose. But here's the catch. You cannot live in the scaffolding forever. Remaining permanently in a state of fear leads to severe psychological constriction.
It's exhausting.
It really is. Fear is a brilliant starting line, but a terrible finish line. Over time, for the soul to actually expand and reach tranquility, love must enter the equation. You no longer just avoid the bad out of terror, you actively sprint toward the good out of deep affection for it.
It is the shift from I have to do this to I get to do this. The fear protects the structure of your life, but the love gives it its actual meaning.
However, the texts offer a very sharp warning here. Love without any discipline or fear can quickly devolve into looseness and complacency.
You can get too relaxed.
Right. You need both forces. Fear and love must act as the two wings of a bird. And when they are perfectly balanced in a human being, they produce something incredibly fragile, rare, and precious sincerity. Or, in Arabic, ikhlas.
Sincerity. The art of the unseen. The sources describe true sincerity as the most profoundly solitary state a human being can experience. There's no audience. There is no applause. There is no external validation whatsoever. It is just you and your purest, uncorrupted intention.
It's beautiful, but it's hard.
So what does this all mean for us today? Because when reading this section, the modern applications were practically screaming off the page. The text issues this chilling warning. It states that people today live merely to be, but to be seen.
It is a devastatingly accurate diagnosis of the modern condition.
It really is. Think about the architecture of our daily lives. We live in an era of unprecedented hypervisibility. Everything is documented.
Every single thing.
The commanding ego is constantly whispering, just show off a little bit. You did a good deed. You had a profound thought. You helped someone, just post it. Let people know. Harvest the credit.
The dopamine hit.
Yes, it is agonizingly difficult to do something genuinely good and entirely resist the urge to be recognized for it.
And Sufi psychology argues that this craving for visibility fundamentally alters the molecular structure of the action itself.
Wow, really?
Yes. When you perform a good deed and keep it entirely hidden, it drives its roots deep into your character. It nourishes your tranquil self. But the exact moment you display it for applause, it becomes shallow.
Because you traded it for likes.
Exactly. The gaze of others has entered the equation, and your original pure intention is immediately contaminated by the desire for social currency. Sincerity is the agonizing art of intentionally freeing yourself from the drug of the external gaze. It is the practice of cultivating the unseen.
It is the ultimate flex of the tranquil ego. To know your own worth without needing a crowd to verify it.
Absolutely.
And if you can sustain that, if you could protect your sincerity from the applause of the crowd, you arrive at what this ancient wisdom calls the final station, contentment.
The deepest, most desperate longing of every human being is for peace. But we almost exclusively search for it in the external world, in wealth, in status, in the perfect circumstances.
The stuff we can see.
Right. But the tranquil self represents the complete end of inner resistance. It is a conscious, deeply rooted embrace of reality. As one of the texts beautifully states, a heart content carries no burden.
I love that quote.
It's profound. You no longer fight the circumstances of your life. What comes is meaningfully embraced because your internal ecosystem is finally secure.
Which proves the greatest battle you will ever fight was never on the outside. It was always an inside job.
Precisely. The self is no longer a chaotic problem that needs to be suppressed. It has become a balanced, illuminating force. You realize that the greatest victory a human being can ever achieve is won precisely in the quiet moments where absolutely no one else can see.
What a massive journey we've taken today. For you listening, we've covered an immense amount of ground. We started by challenging the assumption that your mind is just a biological machine, realizing that the physical brain is merely the radio receiver for the profound signal of the soul.
A huge paradigm shift.
It is. We traveled through the thresholds of certainty, moving from the intellect's map to the heart's bucket to the lived, undeniable experience of actually drinking from the well. We tracked the grueling evolution of the self, the nafs, watching it transform from a commanding, consuming fire into an illuminating light, steered by the perfect tension between fear and love.
The two wings of the bird.
Exactly. And finally, we arrive at the quiet, solitary peak of sincerity, learning to protect our goodness from the corrupting gaze of the crowd to find true contentment.
It is a timeless blueprint for mastering the inner life, especially in a world completely obsessed with the outer one.
It truly is. And to close out our deep dive today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on that vital concept of the unseen. The wisdom we've explored today insists that the absolute truest form of sincerity is to remain good even when entirely hidden, completely starving your ego's need for an audience.
Which is the hardest test.
In our hyper-connected, relentlessly visible world, it is a radical concept. So think about your own life. If you knew for an absolute, undeniable fact that no one would ever see, acknowledge, or reward the very next good deed you do, would your ego still let you do it? And more importantly, how would it change the way that deed actually feels in your heart?